At Starbound, we like to tell stories the human way, not with artificial slop or AI voices. What's HFY without humanity? So, subscribe if you want to keep it that way. My name is Dan, and let's begin. The noodle shop's back room held the sharp, metallic tang of a leaking power conduit and the cloying sweetness of stale synth broth. Rain hammered the grimy window pane, smearing the Cascadia Metroplex's glow into a fractured smear of color. Detective Mahika Cortez centered her stance, her palm warm against her service pistol's grip. The floorboards groaned under her boots, a familiar sound in this damp, neglected city corner. Across the cluttered space, her partner stood motionless. Executive Valen, an Athelian, held his posture perfectly still, a stark contrast to the room's chaos. Vents on his elongated jawline hissed, a mechanical rhythm against the downpour outside, each exhalation filtering Earth's dense, pollen-rich air. His face, a complex sensor array, shimmered with a shifting grid of blue light, mapping the room's thermal and kinetic signatures. Deploying surveillance drones is the optimal course, Valen stated, his synthesized voice level cutting through the ambient noise. Accord regulations require a preliminary scan to quantify hostile assets. Mahika looked from their target, a Jotun with a physique like a bulkhead and fists the size of engine blocks, to Valen. Right, let's ask the guy with the illegal plasma caster for his permit before we go in. Your sarcasm registers as a significant deviation from optimal energy expenditure, Detective. Well, so are your drones, she muttered. The Chirop's appendages, joined like a spider's legs, tapped a frantic rhythm on the table. The glimmer kept stretching his neck. The deal was souring. The contraband, a crate of black market Accord hardware, sat between them on a table slick with grease. Police! Hands where I can see them! The Chirop grabbed for a weapon with one appendage and flipped the furniture with another. The Jotun bellowed, a low-frequency hum that vibrated in her bones, and leveled a bulky sidearm that sparked with contained energy. Mahika dove behind the overturned table as a bolt of plasma slagged the wall where her head was a moment before. The air grew hot, thick with the chemical stench of vaporized polymers. Valen stepped twice to the left, positioning himself behind a structural support pillar. He raised his sidearm, an Accord-issue pulse rifle, and fired. The concussive blast was a clean, sharp thump. The glimmer crumpled, his limbs folded backward at the joints. The Chirop fired a storm of misdirected plasma. Mahika popped up from her cover, sighted, and sent 2 rounds into him. The Chirop jittered and fell, limbs tangled. That left the behemoth. The Jotun lumbered forward, the conductive filaments in his hide grounding the pulse from Valen's rifle with a shower of blue sparks. They cornered him between them. He glanced from one to the other. He glanced at the contraband crate, and a desperate, ugly grin split his face. He dropped his weapon and fumbled in the crate, pulling out a small, boxy device with a lens on the front. A metric indexer, a cheap, knockoff version. Regulation 9.4, Valen warned, the modulator in his voice straining at the upper registers. We must scan hostiles to establish a quantifiable threat level. He's cornered, Valen! Mahika yelled, keeping her pistol trained on the Jotun's massive chest. The Jotun ignored them. He aimed the scanner at Mahika. Let's see what we got here, he growled, his voice a low rumble. Some hotshot human cop? Bet your metric score was worth less than the paperwork. A high-pitched, straining whine came from the scanner. A small, dim screen on its side flickered. A familiar chill tightened in Mahika's gut. The same feeling she got at every official Accord checkpoint. The moment of judgment, where a machine told everyone what she was worth. The device's whine climbed higher, then sputtered. The number on the screen settled 0.00. The Jotun stared at the reading. his brow furrowed, then his lips peeled back in a smile. He let out a laugh that shook the flimsy walls. One of his cronies, the Glimmer, groaned from the floor, but managed a wheezing chuckle. "An off-scale," the Jotun bellowed, shaking his head. "Void! You're a statistical ghost, a rounding error. Shades beneath the paperwork for an arrest." The jeers echoed in the small room. Mahika's focus narrowed to a single point, her pulse pounding in her ears, and a wave of heat washed through her. The metric indexer in the Jotun's hand screamed. A plume of white smoke erupted from its casing, followed by a shower of spitting blue sparks. The device went dark with a final pop. The Jotun's laughter cut off. He stared at the dead piece of junk in his hand, his brow furrowed in confusion. She surged forward. The Jotun was still looking at the scanner as she deflected his clumsy grab. Her right fist slammed into his wrist, and the impact shattered the bone with an audible crack. The Jotun howled. Mahika spun, using his immense bulk as a shield, shoving him backward into the path of a taser dart that sizzled from the Glimmer's hidden holdout pistol. The Jotun convulsed. A mountain caught in a lightning storm and crashed to the floor, taking the Glimmer down with him. The Chirrupt, back on his feet, stared with wide optical sensors, dropped his weapon, and raised his appendages. The hiss of Valen's vents and the smuggler's groans broke the quiet. Scattered noodles and shattered crockery littered the floor. Valen stood over the scene, his pulse rifle held in a low, ready position. The blue lights of his sensory suit pulsed erratically, sweeping over Mahika, then the broken scanner, then back to Mahika. "The readings are contradictory," he said, his synthesized tone wavering for a microsecond. "My sensors registered a systemic failure in the hostile's device, preceded by a surge of bioelectricity from your position, Detective. A surge containing both high output kinetic potential and a simultaneous null-state energy signature." Mahika holstered her weapon, her pulse a heavy, steady beat in her ears. She looked at the smoldering piece of tech on the floor. This was the second time she'd broken an Accord scanner, but the first time someone had laughed. Captain Mila Jankowski's office held the lingering aroma of burnt coffee and the sharp tang of an overloaded data hub. She folded her arms. A severe woman with a haircut that looked sharp enough to be a weapon. The perpetual Cascadia rain streaked the window behind her desk, turning the towering cityscape into a distorted wash of light. "And the court formal inquiry," Jankowski said, her voice low and even. She tapped a finger on the flex screen on her desk. Valen's official portrait stared up from it, next to a block of text highlighted in red. "That's a new one, Executor. In my 20 years on this force, cops have started riots and crashed orbital shuttles. Even the one who stole the mayor's prize-winning Costonian Ridgeback got a commendation. You got a formal inquiry from the Accord delegation." Valen stood with his back straight, his sensor array focused on the captain, analyzing her micro-expressions and thermal fluctuations. Destroying Accord-patent technology, even a black market facsimile, triggers an automatic review under Mandate 48 Gamma. My report recited the facts. "Your report," Jankowski countered, picking up a different screen, "is 3 pages of technical analysis on why the scanner failed. Cortez's report," she lifted another, much thinner screen, "says, and I quote, apprehended 3 hostiles, recovered contraband, 1 piece of inoperable evidence. Concise." Mahika stood beside Valen, feeling like a truant in a principal's office. "The situation was volatile, Captain. I acted." "You always do, Cortez," Jankowski sighed, massaging the bridge of her nose. "Look, the scanner is a distraction. I care that this incident links to a dozen others across the sector. Hardware malfunctions, bioframe crashes, assassination disguised as tech failures. We're calling them Null Cartel. They're your priority now." She looked at Mahika's set jaw, then at Valen's rigid posture. "And you two are partners on this, official." Mahika bristled. Captain, with all due respect, the executor's methods are thorough. Valen finished for her, his tone unchanging. And they adhere to the 1,428 procedural statutes governing law enforcement between species. Detective Cortez's methods work, but generate considerable collateral paperwork. I am past caring, Jankowski snapped. The Accord is crawling all over this dead scanner, and Valen's career is on the line. The fastest way to make this go away is to solve the damn case. Valen, you know the Accord tech better than anyone in this precinct. Cortez, you know how this city breathes. Put it together. She leaned forward, and she fixed her gaze on them. The Accord wants answers. Find them before they send their own investigators. Trust me, their involvement is a disaster. Now get out. They turned to leave, and they met each other's glances in the doorway for a fraction of a second. The lower levels of Cascadia Metroplex were a world away from the gleaming spires above. Down here, the rain dripped instead of fell, a constant, greasy film condensing on exposed pipes and leaking from rusted ceiling plates. Holographic signs in a dozen languages flickered and glitched, casting a strobing light over the crowded alleys. Valen's vents hissed in a steady, rapid rhythm, working overtime to filter the sensory assault. The particulate matter count is 4 times the Accord-approved atmospheric standard, he observed. The ambient EM field is corrupting my short-range sensors. Welcome to the real world, Executor, Mika said, sidestepping a puddle of sludge that swirled with greasy rainbow sheen. Up there, you get zoning laws. Down here, you get character. She led him to a stall crammed with heaps of scavenged electronics and mismatched tech components. Presiding over the junk heap was Finch, a mycoid whose body was a bundle of delicate, articulated filaments, like a clockwork fungus. His limbs moved in a constant, twitching dance. He polished a dented chrome toaster with one limb, resoldered a circuit board with another, and counted credits with a third. Finch, Mahika said, leaning against the counter. All 6 of Finch's optical sensors swiveled to her, then to the tall Athelian standing behind her. His appendages froze. Detective Cortez, and an Accord executor. This is an official visit, I presume. He click-chittered. We're looking for information, Mahika said, keeping her voice low. About a group calling themselves the Null Cartel. His filaments vibrated, shedding a fine dusting of spores. One of his limbs knocked over a stack of memory chips. That name is bad for business. I want to stay away from it. Your business is already bad, Finch, Mahika said. This is worse. They use devices that scramble tech, make things go dark. Valen stepped forward, his frame blocking the light from the stall. This cartel is responsible for multiple homicides, including the death of an aqueous ambassadorial attaché. Accord Witness Protocol 8 Delta mandates cooperation. Finch's appendages trembled. He looked from Valen's shimmering sensor suit to Mahika's steady gaze. They're believers, Detective, he whispered, his voice a series of soft clicks. Zealots, their devices, the dampeners, they jam things, and worse. They make you a ghost in your own skin. They turn you off. They want everyone to be a zero. He tapped the small biomonitor strapped to one of his thin wrists. The device displayed his own modest metric score. Where do they operate? Mahika pressed. Finch hesitated, then his filaments drooped. I heard they're moving a big shipment tonight from the old Maglev freight depot in the industrial sector, section Gamma 9. His optical sensors darted from one dark alley to the next. That's all I know. I've told you nothing. We never spoke. Thanks, Finch. Stay safe. As they turned to leave, Mahika saw Valen's hand brush against the edge of Finch's cloak. A flicker of movement, too quick for most to see. He attached a micro-tracker. Accord Mandate 912, he said before she could object. Protecting vital intelligence assets. You mean witnesses? She corrected. The mandate uses the term assets, he replied, his metronomic gait already carrying him through the crowded alley. A more accurate descriptor. Mahika sighed and followed him back to the Undercity's flickering chaos. Every object in the ambassador's suite sat in its place, aligned with the clean, minimalist aesthetic favored by the aqueous delegation. Someone sealed the airlock from within and set the atmospheric controls to maintain the high-pressure, saline environment the owner required. The owner himself lay on the floor. The aqueous ambassador's gelatinous body, normally a translucent blue that pulsed with faint inner light, was a dull, opaque gray. Its integrated exosuit, the complex life support system that allowed it to exist in an oxygen-nitrogen environment, was dark. Valen's senses swept the room, building a three-dimensional map of kinetic residues and thermal echoes. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his analysis immediate. Cause of death, catastrophic life support failure. The suit's primary and backup power cells remain fully charged. The filtration system is functional. The atmospheric seals are intact. The suit effectively shut down. Mahika knelt by the desk. She swept her hand along the polished chrome surface's underside and stopped. Got something. She peeled a small, metallic disc from under the desk, the size of a credit coin, cold to the touch, with a micro-etched pattern of intricate spirals on its surface. Valen took it from her, holding it delicately in his long, slender fingers. His facial sensors pulsed with blue light as he performed a microscan. A data corruption generator. It broadcasts a localized field of signal noise specifically tuned to accord frequency biomonitors. A dampener. He held the disc up. The ambassador's suit is tied to his biosignature. It monitored his vital signs to maintain the perfect atmospheric balance. This device scrambled that signature. The suit received only garbled data, interpreted as critical system failure or host death, and shut down hard. So it's murder, Mahika said, her voice low. A murder leaving only digital footprints, Valen confirmed. He placed the dampener into a sterile evidence bag. Every Accord security algorithm from here to the galactic core would flag the report he was already composing in his mind. The death of accredited diplomat by prohibited technology was an interstellar incident. His superiors would receive the notification within the hour. 50 hours. Captain Jankowski's voice was flat. She stood, silhouetted against her office window. The Metroplex's lights a galaxy of distant stars behind her. That's the official ETA. An aqueous inquest fleet is en route to assist in the investigation. They're bringing an Accord Internal Affairs unit with them. Think of them as executors who prefer audits. Valen's posture was rigid. I filed the report on the ambassador's death in accordance with Emergency Protocol 15. The response is standard. Standard procedure will flatten my precinct, Valen. Jankowski shot back. When they get here, this stops being our city. It becomes their case file. They will lock this place down, and they'll steamroll anyone who gets in their way. Mahika leaned forward in her chair. So, we're off the case? No. Jankowski turned from the window, her jaw set. You have a deadline. Accord Protocol has one tiny, beautiful loophole. Until that fleet enters local space, the ranking executor on site, that's you, Valen, retains primary jurisdiction to complete a preliminary threat assessment. She pointed at them. That's your mandate. That's your shield. You have 50 hours to find the Null Cartel and dismantle them. Solve it, or they'll bury my city, your career, and our only shot at figuring this out under a mountain of Accord red tape. Mahika looked at Valen. His blue sensors glowed steadily. The deadline's weight settled on her shoulders. The patrol vehicle felt smaller than usual. Rain drummed a relentless rhythm on the roof. Mahika slurped cheap, reconstituted noodles from a paper carton, the steam fogging her side of the windshield. Across from her, Valen sat bolt upright. His sensor suit focused on the Gamma 9 freight depot's sprawling, shadowy expanse. "Your nutritional intake lacks sufficiency," Valen observed. "The starch content is excessive and the protein is low grade. It's warm and it's cheap. It's all my major food groups," she replied, poking at a piece of rubbery synth meat. "You want to deploy the long-range scanners again?" "That's the logical course of action," he said, supplemented by audio-receptive drones to monitor communications. "And you'd get another mountain of irrelevant data," she countered, gesturing with her chopsticks. "We need to watch, see how they move, who meets who, get a feel for the place." "Feelings are unquantifiable as data, Detective." She put the noodle carton down. Tell me something, Valen. Has data ever been wrong?" The blue lights of his facial sensors flickered. The only sound was the rain. "Yes," he said, his voice a fraction lower than usual. "Once." She waited. He remained still. Then his vents hissed once sharply. "A hostage situation on Callisto's Reach. A separatist cell took over a broadcast tower. My partner, Executor Correa, was on point. The information was unambiguous. 5 biosignatures, 3 distinct heartbeats for the hostages. A clear map of thermal and kinetic signatures. The readings were perfect." He paused. "The separatists used a network hologram projector, a new technology at the time. My sensors registered the holograms as solids, 5 heat signatures, 5 kinetic profiles. Correa went in, trusting the readings." Mahika suppressed a sarcastic retort. 12 hostiles were present, Valen stated. The 3 hostages were decoys, wired with explosives. The readings were a lie. The outcome was fatal. He turned his head, his sensor-laced face aimed at her through the gloom. "Since that day, I have operated on a single principle. Trust only verifiable, quantifiable data. A system that has prevented 127 potential miscalculations. A system that works." The rain continued to fall, drumming on the roof between them. The deal went down just after midnight. A heavy load transport, its grav plates humming a low thrum that vibrated through the car's chassis, backed into a loading bay. Figures emerged from the shadows, loading crates with smooth, synchronized movements. "Time to go," Mahika said, racking the slide on her service pistol. "I have marked 5 hostiles," Valen said, his pulse rifle already powered up, possibly more inside the depot. They moved in, using the stacked cargo containers and the deep shadows as cover. They were 50 meters from the transport when a figure stopped, lifting a device. A harsh electronic pulse hit them. Every light on Valen's rifle went dark. The blue glow of his facial sensors dissolved into a shower of static, then winked out. The rhythmic hiss of his vents sputtered and died. "Cortez!" he yelled. His synthesized voice broke. "My sensors are blind! All systems are inert! It's a wide-spectrum null field!" He reeled, his internal gyros struggling to compensate as his sensory inputs vanished. He was a creature of data, plunged into an absolute void. The blackout that crippled Valen sharpened Mahika's focus. The world snapped into clarity. The glint of moonlight on a weapon barrel, the scuff of a boot on concrete, the whisper of fabric as an enemy turned. Plasma bolts tore through the air where they'd been standing. Mahika grabbed Valen's arm and hauled him behind a massive stack of Durasteel crates. "Stay with me!" she shouted over the rising crescendo of gunfire. "Call out targets!" She peered around the edge of their corner. "2 of them, 40 meters, you're 9 o'clock. Valen raised his inert rifle. The targeting system was offline, but its concussive discharge remained potent. He fired. The blast went wide, but it kicked up a cloud of dust and debris, forcing the cartel members to dive for cover. "Another one, closing on our right flank!" Mahika yelled. She leaned out and fired 3 shots. A grunt, and a body hit the ground. Gunfire kept them pinned. The transport's engine roared to life. The leader's getting away!" she snarled. She shoved Valen toward the patrol car. "Get in! I'll cover you!" She laid down a volley of suppressing fire, forcing the remaining cartel soldiers to keep their cover. Valen, moving with a stiff, uncertain gait, fumbled with the car door. For the first time since she met him, he looked clumsy. They scrambled into the car just as the transport truck screeched out of the depot and onto the access ramp for the elevated mag-level highway. Mihika slammed the accelerator, tires screaming as they gave chase. The elevated highway was a torrent of light, a ribbon of trans steel and energy fields suspended 1,000 feet above the city's lower levels. The patrol vehicle, a clunky ground-to-grav hybrid, strained to keep pace with the sleek, powerful transport truck. "Systems rebooting," Valen announced, his voice strained. His facial sensors flickered back to life, but the blue light was weak, unstable. "Tactical and targeting systems are inert. Navigational sensors are barely functional." "Just tell me where they're going," Mihika shouted, weaving through the sparse late-night traffic. A panel on the transport back slid open, revealing a weapon emplacement. It fired a series of small, black canisters that tumbled through the air. "Gravity skewers!" Valen yelled. "Prohibited munitions! Evade now!" The canisters detonated, projecting brief pulses of intense gravity. The pulse plucked a cargo hauler in the next lane from the highway and tossed it into the air. It slammed another car into the pavement with enough force to buckle the trans-steel plates. Mihika yanked the wheel hard right, her knuckles white. She swerved around an airborne taxi, cut left to dodge a sparking guardrail, then accelerated through the gap. "Another wave incoming, trajectory Alpha 8, Valen called out. His one functioning sensor could plot the skewer paths, serving as her navigator. "Hard left in 3 seconds, he commanded. Mihika counted down, timing it in her gut, and threw the vehicle into a controlled skid. A gravity skewer distorted the air where they were a moment before, crumpling a section of guardrail into a ball of metal spaghetti. They were gaining on the truck. Then the transport swerved towards the highway's edge, blasted through the remaining railing, and drove off into the open air. Its own industrial-grade grav plates flared, slowing its 1,000-foot drop to a bone-jarring but survivable landing on a rooftop far below. Mihika slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt at the broken highway's edge. The transport disappeared into the concrete canyons below. They lost him, but they survived, and a whole truckload of his tech remained at the depot. The precinct's tech lab was a sterile, brightly lit room that smelled of energized circuits and hot metal. An Accord-certified technician, a morph, extruded 4 slender manipulators from its amorphous torso to run diagnostics on a captured dampener, its primary photoreceptor darting between readouts. "This device is illogical," the morph chirped, its voice a series of synthesized tones. "I've run 3 standard analysis sweeps. The device appears to be a solid-state signal generator, but its internal power source reads as null. It seems to be a data storage unit with a memory architecture showing 0 capacity. It functions like a communications relay with a sealed receiver. Every analysis returns a critical error." Mihika leaned against the workbench, a headache throbbing behind her eyes. "So, it's a box of contradictions." Valen, standing silently in the corner while his systems underwent a full recalibration, stepped forward. He picked up the small disk, turning it over in his hands. His facial sensors, now stable and glowing with their usual blue light, pulsed as he scanned its molecular structure. "The technician is correct," Valen stated. "The unit is all of those things, but he's analyzing it as a single object, overlooking paired state resonance." The morph's primary photoreceptor dilated. "Paired state resonance? That's theoretical, restricted technology." "The energy signature is faint but present," Valen continued. "This unit is only half of a pair. It draws power wirelessly from its twin. It streams data in real time. It functions as a receiver because it has a physical link to its broadcast point across space." He looked at Mihika. It broadcasts a scrambling signal and records the biosignature it's suppressing. Mika stepped back. "The ambassador," she said in a whisper. "They copied him, then turned off his suit." "They are stealing a person's metric," Valen confirmed, his tone flat. "Their quantifiable essence. This level of technology requires state sponsorship, or someone with access to a court-level research and development." "Can you trace the signal?" she asked. "Someone heavily encrypted and masked the data stream, bounced through dozens of public network nodes," Valen said. "But the carrier wave, the resonance signal, maintaining cohesion requires a massive amount of localized energy. The user would need to route it through a hub with enough overlapping biosignatures and EM chatter to hide the power draw." He projected a map of Cascadia Metroplex onto the wall. A single location blinked red. Only one place in the city has that kind of dense energy profile. Mahika stared at the blinking light. The Centennial Carnival on the waterfront. A riot of light, sound, and people, and the last place she expected to find the heart of a high-tech conspiracy. For Valen, the Centennial Carnival was hell. A chaotic, overwhelming torrent of unstructured data. The screams of delighted children, the discordant music of a dozen different rides, the smell of fried dough and spun sugar, the flashing lights. A sensory overload that pushed his senses to their limits. Drastically reducing his sensor acuity to avoid a system crash left him with fractured, unreadable input. He relied on Mahika to guide him through the throng of humans and aliens, a sea of unpredictable variables. "It's like trying to find one specific data packet in the middle of a solar flare," he commented, his voice clipped. "Relax, Valen. Have some synth cotton candy. Live a little," Mahika said with a small smirk. She wove through the crowd, parting a path for them while she constantly scanned the faces and the shadows. They were passing a hall of mirrors when a small, brightly colored festival drone zipped in front of them, hovering at eye level. A modulated, level voice spoke from its speaker. "Detective Cortez, Executive Valen, a pleasure to meet you in person. My employer wishes to negotiate." Mahika reached for her sidearm. "Who's your employer?" "He believes names are just another metric, a label. He prefers his work to define him." The drone chirped. "He invites you to join him at the Ferris wheel's top. The venue, he believes, offers a certain perspective." An image flickered on the drone's small screen. Finch, the mycoid informant, bound to a chair, his appendages tied, his cluster of eyes wide. "Your executive's tracking wafer was most helpful," the drone added cheerfully. "He used a standard accord frequency. We monitor them all. My employer appreciates such predictability." Valen's vents hissed, his own protocol endangered a witness. They found him in a cabin at the Ferris wheel's apex. The sprawling, rain-slicked city was a carpet of light below them. He was a harmonic, a species with skin covered in microscopic, resonant fibers that shimmered under the cabin lights. But his fibers emitted only a low, dissonant hum. He wore a simple tunic, a sound-absorbent material, his posture relaxed and still. "Orion," Valen said, his voice flat. He ran the harmonics image through the Accord database on the way over. The file was thin, but the name was there. "A label?" Orion replied with a serene smile. "I am a systems architect." He gestured to the city below. "Look at it, Executor. A society built on the tyranny of measurement. Your worth, your station, your future, decided by a number, a metric score. I offer an alternative. Equality, the universal baseline, the null state." He produced a scanner, a high-end military-grade metric indexer, sleek and dark. He aimed it at Mahika. "I've heard rumors, of course," Orion said, his eyes alight with focused intensity. "An anomaly in the system. a presence that defies measurement devices, an officer with a null state. He activated the scanner. Let us test that theory. The device in Orion's hand emitted a deep, resonant hum, a sound of contained power. Its design channeled any energy overload. The air in the small cabin grew thick, charged with static. The beam hit her, a strange, invasive pressure, a sense of observation, of measurement and quantification, down to the last molecule. Her heartbeat, a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Orion's men, waiting in the cabin next to theirs, moved on Finch. Her pulse surged, a fight-or-flight response igniting her nerves. Orion's smile tightened. The readings on his scanner climbed into the red. Fascinating. The energy output is exponential. The scanner's hum deepened, and the Ferris wheel's lights flickered. The energy from the scanner, reinforced by Mahika's own biological surge, fed back into the Carnival's power grid, a feedback loop. With a groan of tortured metal, the Ferris wheel shuddered to a halt. The cabin swayed violently. Then, one by one, the Carnival's lights died. The music sputtered and went silent. Gasps and screams replaced the crowd's cheerful drone. In a domino-like wave of failure, every piece of technology connected to the grid in a 100-meter radius shut down. Darkness plunged them, the only light coming from the distant city. Orion's smile vanished. He stared at the dead scanner in his hand, then at Mahika, his expression shifting from fury to awe. "Magnificent," he whispered into the quiet. "Magnificent disruption." In the ensuing panic, as people scrambled in the dark, Mahika acted. She kicked open the cabin door, swung out, and dropped onto the cabin roof below. She smashed the plexiglass window, cut Finch free, and hauled him out. When she looked back, Orion's cabin was empty. He and his men vanished into the panicked, sightless crowd. Valen stood in the absolute blackness. His technology was inert. His senses vanished. He was blind again. But this time, his posture remained steady. He listened for the sound of Mahika's footsteps. They sat on a bench on the boardwalk, the Carnival's dark, silent skeleton behind them. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against the pilings and the distant hum of city traffic. Finch, wrapped in a thermal blanket and sipping a steaming mug of protein broth, was giving a statement to an officer a safe distance away. Valen's systems came back online as soon as they cleared the blackout zone. His blue sensors pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm as he stared out at the dark water. "All my life," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it, "I have operated on a single principle. Trust only measurable things." He turned his sensor-laced mask to Mahika. His sensors pulsed, trying to resolve the contradictory data she presented. "My principles are insufficient." He paused. "You are an asset, Detective Cortez. A volatile, unpredictable, regulation-defying asset." Mahika looked at her own hands. The fear and shame she had always associated with her condition, her null state, gave way to something else. A sense of control. "He did more than try to read me, Valen. He intended to collect me." "He is a collector," Valen agreed. "The dampeners are weapons, and more. They are his collection jars." He held up a small, scorched memory chip. "I recovered this from the drone that brought us his invitation. The pulse corrupted most of its data, but I managed to restore a single encrypted fragment." He projected the data into the air between them. A string of complex code appeared, but 3 words stood out: paired state, calibration, telemetry. Mahika frowned. "Oh, what does that mean?" "I know," Valen said, his voice clipped and fast. That's a technical term for the synchronization signal used by one piece of Accord technology in this sector. He gazed towards the heavens, toward the faint, orbiting star that was the sector's primary facility, the calibration collider in the metric vault. Valen traced patterns across the holographic interface in his small, Spartan apartment. He was slicing into the main Accord network, using his own high-level executor access codes to bypass firewalls and security protocols. An act that would end his career, but his career was already on the line. "Orion," he said, as a heavily redacted file appeared on the screen. "Former data theorist at the Accord Institute of Advanced Metrology. Excommunicated for promoting heretical theories. He argued that metric score was an active force that shaped reality, rather than a passive measurement of it. He believed that if you could control the system of measurement, you could rewrite reality itself." Mahika paced behind him. "So he's trying to prove his old bosses wrong?" "His goal is far more ambitious," Valen said, his tone flat as he cross-referenced data streams. "He has been uploading the biosignatures he has collected. The metric vault's schedule shows its system-wide synchronization pulse in 24 hours. He intends to use the calibration collider during that pulse." He pulled up a schematic of a massive spherical chamber. The collider maintains a resonance-locked reference particle. It broadcasts that particle's perfect stable state across the entire network to ensure every piece of Accord measurement technology synchronizes properly. Orion plans to hijack that pulse. He will overwrite the official records of his enemies with the null state data he has collected. He will erase them from the galactic record. He highlighted a list of names. The first one made Mahika's stomach clench. "The Aqueous Ambassador," she breathed. "And his entire delegation. This is more than erasure. He's creating a political vacuum. An act of war." "The metric vault is a fortress," Mahika said. "How do we get in?" Valen worked the schematics, digging through layers of archaic security protocols. A faint smile touched the corner of his thin lips. The Accord's arrogance is its greatest weakness. They constantly upgrade their primary systems, but they neglect the legacy code. He highlighted a single line of data. A maintenance access code for a decommissioned physical waste reclamation chute. Someone built the modern biometric security grid around it, but the system lacks active monitoring. They consider it obsolete. "And once we're inside, internal security relies on modern biometric scanners," Valen said. "The moment I step through one, every alarm in the station will activate. My metric score is my passport and my prison." He looked at Mahika, the blue lights on his face reflecting in her eyes. "But your signature, their scanners will read you as a void. They will register only an error." The maintenance shuttle was a cramped utilitarian craft that smelled of solvent and scrubber-processed air. It approached the metric vault, a gleaming silver sphere hanging in the blackness of space, a monument to order and data. Valen's legacy code worked. Docking clamps engaged with a solid, reassuring thud. Inside the vault, the corridors were sterile and white, bathed in a soft, even light. The silent, ever-watchful hum from the overlapping biometric scanner fields lining the walls was the only security. "Arrogance," Valen murmured, as he powered down his auxiliary systems, minimizing his energy signature to a bare whisper. They trust their bioscans so completely, they deem physical security redundant. He pointed down the long corridor. The scanner fields pulse. They run a brief diagnostic sweep every 10 seconds. I must time my movements to pass through during those sweeps. If the system detects my signature, they'll know you're here. Mahika finished. She breathed deep. "Okay, let's try the easy way first." She walked forward, straight into the first scanner field. Blue light washed over her. The corridor remained silent. She turned and looked back at Valen. On a small monitor on the wall, the system log read, Scanner Anomaly 8B, Field Coherence Error, Resetting. The system registered her as a glitch and ignored her. She grinned, walking through walls. They developed a rhythm. At each security door, Mahika would walk straight through the scanner grid. On the other side, she would activate the manual emergency release lever, allowing Valen to slip through during the next diagnostic sweep. Slow, painstaking work. A high-tech game of leapfrog through the galaxy's most secure facility. Corridor by corridor, door by door, they advanced toward the station's heart, to the calibration collider's chamber. The chamber was immense, a cathedral built to honor a single perfect number. The calibration collider, already warming up for its system-wide pulse, hung in the center, a massive sphere of crackling energy suspended in a web of magnetic containment fields. And standing before it, at a control console, was Orion. He turned as they entered, his expression placid. Detective Cortez, Executive Valen, you are on schedule. He gestured to the shimmering sphere of energy. It's beautiful, a true ultimate arbiter, the prime metric, the instrument that tells the entire galaxy what is real. Elite guards, clad in the same sound-dampening armor as Orion, emerged from the corridors, their weapons raised. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. We are liberating ourselves from the statistical tyranny of our birth. Today, we reset the scales. We return to the sublime purity of zero. Valen moved on the guards. His first strike struck one guard's knee joint. His second disarmed another with a sharp rap to the wrist. He flowed between them, a series of targeted, disabling impacts. Mahika went for Orion. As she closed the distance, the ambient energy from the collider washed over her. Orion flinched, his own resonant field filling with static. A statistical outlier, he muttered, his serene expression breaking. He stabbed a command into his console. A localized stasis field shimmered into existence around her, but it flickered and died. Her paradoxical biosignature confounded the field's targeting logic. The field tried to trap a ghost and a star at the same time, and it collapsed. Orion screamed in frustration. He slammed his hand down on the main activation panel. Since collecting you is impossible, I will erase you. Let's see what the universe's ultimate measuring stick makes of you. He rerouted the collider's primary focusing beam, aiming it at her instead of the network. The beam hit Mahika, and the world dissolved into light and pressure. A sense of definition, of compression into a single data point. The universe itself tried to measure her, to force her unpredictable, living reality into a neat little box. Her body responded, a total adrenal flood. Every cell ignited, the surge from the noodle shop, the feedback from the carnival magnified 1,000 times. The essence of her humanity, paradoxical, resilient, turbulent, and unquantifiable. Her biology met the beam, stabilized against it, and then pushed back. Her unpredictable biological reality, a flood of contradictory signals and exponential energy, poured into the collider's resonant state calibration systems. The biological equivalent of feeding a star's core data into a pocket calculator. Alarms blared across the chamber. The collider's crackling energy sphere flickered, its perfect, stable state destabilized. The system, designed to measure and define everything, encountered the one thing its processing power failed to resolve. A human pushed to her absolute limit. Orion stared, his jaw slack as his perfect machine, his god of numbers, shattered against the simple, messy reality of a living woman. No, the data must be clean. The chamber tore itself apart. Containment fields collapsed. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Valen, his opponents on the floor and groaning, grabbed Mahika's arm. Orion scrambled to save his research. A containment field collapsed around him, trapping him in a shimmering prison of raw energy, a feedback loop of data he sought to control. He screamed as his own philosophy consumed him. Valen paused, and he cocked his head toward the sound. "Let's go!" Mahika yelled, pulling him toward the exit. They fled the chamber as the calibration collider, the Accord's heart of order, imploded behind them, collapsing into a silent, perfect singularity. Weeks later, they stood again in Captain Jankowski's office. The rain outside was the same. The coffee still smelled stale, but everything else had changed. A high-ranking Accord official, a stern-faced magmatic with skin like polished hematite, appeared via hologram on Jankowski's desk. His posture was stiff. "The incident at Metric Vault has precipitated a paradigm shift in Accord security philosophy," the official stated. Authorities presumed Orion dead, vaporized in the collider's collapse. They foiled his plan, but the vulnerability he exposed sent shockwaves through the entire Accord bureaucracy. The magmatic gazed at Mahika, then Valen. "The Orion incident proves our quantification models possess a fundamental blind spot, a vulnerability to phenomena that defy conventional data analysis." He clasped his hands behind his back. "We require a new instrument, a unit designed to study, contain, and neutralize such phenomena." He paused. "Therefore, the Accord High Directorate has authorized the creation of a new experimental unit, operating under joint accord and local jurisdiction, the Division of Anomalous Affairs. Its mandate is to investigate threats that exist outside our own metrics." Jankowski slid a new flex screen across her desk. It contained their first assignment, along with a new high-level security clearance. Valen looked at Mahika. The blue lights on his facial sensors pulsed twice in a quick, rhythmic pattern. Mahika picked up the flex screen, a slow grin spreading across her face. "All right, partner," she said. "Let's go break some stuff."